Are your nipples truly elastic, or are you just in the wrong flange size? Because what I'm about to tell you could completely change your pumping experience. Last week, Jacqueline came to me thinking she had elastic nipples, and after one simple adjustment, she went from being a full bottle behind to meeting her baby's daily needs. Let me break down the biggest flange sizing myth that's confusing so many moms. Before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed to the channel because we share weekly videos to help moms pump faster and more efficiently with way less stress. If you're new here, my name is Allison Tolman. I'm a breast pump expert and a coach for working moms. After working with hundreds of career-driven moms, I've discovered something shocking. The vast majority of the time when someone thinks they have elastic nipples, they actually don't. It's almost always a sizing issue. Just like one of my recent clients said, I went from being frustrated using wearables, thinking they'd never work for me, to having huge success just by changing my flange size. It made all the difference. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what elastic nipples are and why most people who think they have them are completely wrong. By the way, there's a link in the description to learn more about what it looks like to work with me and my team to master all things pumping and protect your milk supply as you return to work. We do lots of flange sizing there as well, among all the other things you need to be successful. Let's start with what actually are elastic nipples, okay? Elastic nipples are not just nipples that stretch the length of the tunnel or swell during pumping. A little bit of stretching and even a little swelling can be normal. Every nipple has elasticity. Your skin has to stretch. That's how skin works. So true elastic nipples, or what we would technically call hyperelastic nipples, are when your nipple stretches more than 2 to 3 times the normal length during pumping. So we're talking about nipples that stretch all the way down to the flange tunnel hitting the back, basically. That's when we're dealing with more elasticity than we typically see as the normal variation. But here's what's happening in most cases. You're seeing the nipple fill up the tunnel, right, which is this part here, or stretching, your skin is stretching all the way to the back, and you think, oh no, I have elastic nipples, right? Wrong. More likely the issue is that a lot of extra tissue is being pulled in, meaning that not just the nipples being pulled in, but a lot of the areola and extra skin around it as well. This means the baseline sizing is wrong. Now, hyperelasticity definitely happens, okay? But way less than you think. One of my program members recently shared how she was convinced she had elastic nipples because her tissue was going all the way to the end. And when we helped her as well do that with me and my team, she had her entire areola inside the flange. It's really hard to tell, I think, for an untrained eye, but it was not hyperelasticity. It just was a flange that was way too big. This is where social media advice gets really dangerous. So I see posts in groups and forums all the time saying, I have elastic nipples, which pump is best for me? And then people start throwing out all kinds of random advice and ideas without really fixing the underlying issue. Like, oh, this pump has good flanges, or this one, or use this hack to make them longer and put this in here. I'm like, oh, think about it this way. If I gave you a size 27 flange and you actually need a 17, of course your nipple and areola are going to get pulled all the way in there. The suction is going to suck, right? It's going to pull in whatever it wants. In my research, after seeing hundreds of nipples over the years and working closely with colleagues who have seen thousands more, I find that the most common flange sizes for people are actually 15, 17, 19, somewhere right around in there. But breast pumps come with 24 and 27 millimeter flanges. And that's because you can't pump with a flange that's too small, right? That will be painful and damaging, but you can technically pump with one that's too big and get some milk out. So I get why they manufacture them that way, but here's the problem. When you're using a flange that doesn't fit well, it's not removing milk efficiently, and you're leaving milk behind. That tells your body, oh, she only needed 80% of the milk that we made. I don't need to make that other 20% next time. That's how a poor flange fit can actually decrease your milk supply over time. So this is a big deal. A good flange fit is so critical. All right, let me share what happened with another one of our clients. She said, I adjusted my flange size from what came with the pump to a 15 on the left and a 17 on the right. The difference in output was huge. Much easier to get a second and third letdowns as well. Flange sizing matters for 4 critical reasons. First is comfort. Pumping should never be uncomfortable. When I find the right flange size for someone, they always say, wow, I didn't know it could feel like this. If your nipple is too big for the flange, it's rubbing and causing damage. If the flange is too big, your nipple and areola could be being stretched in ways that it's not meant to. Even people who are thinking, oh, pumping is fine, it doesn't hurt. When we get them in a right size flange, they're like, oh, now I see. This is way better. Second reason is milk output. You might be getting some output with the wrong size, but you'll likely be shocked at how much faster and easier you can remove milk with the right flange size. I see this consistently. Moms saying things like, I'm getting okay output, it's fine. And then we fix their flange size and suddenly they're like, okay, now I'm getting a lot of milk and this is way better. I can tell I'm really emptying my breast. That's what we like to hear. Third is speed. The right flange size dramatically affects how quickly you can pump. So if pumping's taking a long time or letdowns are taking a long time, flange sizing is a place to start. It's one piece of the puzzle. That client I mentioned recently who said that second and third letdowns had become way easier, that's because proper sizing does that. As a side note, she also had self-sized her own nipples incorrectly with a circular ruler. Those are not my favorite, and I talk about that more in a recent workshop that I did. I'll put a link down below for you. She actually sized herself at a base measurement of 21 millimeters, which was about 4 to 6 millimeters off. So again, more details and actual photos in that recent workshop. And then fourth is tissue health. The wrong size, whether it's too big or too small, can cause nipple trauma, cracks, bleeding, and swelling. We never want to see that happen. But this is not uncommon when clients send me in photos and I'm like, wow, you may not see the damage and underlying swelling that's happening, but I can, and we've got to get you in a better size. Okay, so if you're in that small group who genuinely have hyperelastic nipples, here's what we typically recommend. Step 1, not shockingly, is to get an accurate flange size. No product or hack or anything is going to help fix a baseline that's wrong. So this can be more tricky with elastic nipples, but in my experience, I find it's often pretty close to the base measurement of the nipple. And by the way, missizing the base measurement is a very common mistake when you're doing it yourself. But when we do our sizing, I find that with elastic nipples, we try and go as close to that number as we can. Once you have the right baseline size, then we typically look at a soft silicone flange with the longest tunnel possible, all right? Because your nipple is just going to stretch really far, so we want to give it as much room as we can. I often recommend products like Lactec flanges, Pump and Pals, or other soft silicone options. If the client does want to use a wearable, we often look for a soft silicone insert or an actual cup that it comes within soft silicone style rather than hard plastic, because nipples just slide a lot easier in that hard, smooth plastic. Wearables are tricky because often we can't extend the tunnel length very much because it's just set in the bra like that. But there are a couple of hacks out there we can use to make it work if someone with elastic nipples really, really wants to use a wearable pump. But here's the key, and I cannot stress this enough. We almost always solve what looks like an elastic nipple problems with proper flange fit or just a different style of flange that grips the skin better. Lactec flanges are one of my personal favorites. I'll put a link in the description for you. But it really kind of depends on what your nipple looks like, what struggles you're having, what pumps you're using, based on the products that we recommend. And then at the end of the day, unfortunately, sometimes wearable pumps or cups just are not an option if you have really, really elastic nipples. I hate to say that, but sometimes we can't make it work for everyone when that truly is the issue. Okay, do me a favor. Find the comment section. I would love to know, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you in your flange size? How confident are you that you have the right size? Also, so put that number and then also tell me what size you're using. I think it'll be really fun to go through those comments and kind of see both, one, how confident is everyone? Have you had someone professionally size you? I would love to know. And then tell me what size you're in that has been most effective for you. I would love to read through those comments and kind of collaborate with you down there. Here's what people don't realize. Flange sizing is just one small part of the whole pumping equation. It's actually a small step in the first phase of our 3-phase proven methodology that we use to help moms pump effectively and efficiently while transitioning back to work, right? Your pump is not a baby. There are biological differences in how milk is removed, and getting the flange part right helps not only with comfort and also overall supply, but with long-term pumping success. Plus, your flange size can change throughout your pumping experience. It's really common for us to size someone on maternity leave, and then 3 months later they come back saying, this feels a little different, or I'm getting a little bit less output, and we recheck again, and sure enough, it's changed and adjusted a little bit. Sometimes we even resize a client several times over the initial month, because when you're using one that's really big, sometimes we need to come down a little bit. And then once the swelling and tissue resolves a little bit from the bad size, sometimes we need to size down even more. One client, I think we even sized down 3 times, but she went from a 24 to a 13. And it took us about a month to get that down so we could see the actual base of the nipple without all of that swelling in the way. The most common times I see flange sizing change are a couple weeks after birth, right? After you get all the birth hormones out. 3, 6, 9, 12 months are also some common timings that flange sizing changes a little bit. So this definitely isn't a one and done kind of process. It takes some understanding in realizing what's working and why it's working. So if you're not sure whether elasticity is your issue, or if you want to stop second guessing your entire setup and pumping routine, I want to invite you to watch our recent webinar. It wasn't solely focused on flange sizing. Again, this is a really small step in a really larger pumping picture, but we did cover that exact topic, and I showed some photos and some elastic nipple photos as well. I can't share them on YouTube because YouTube doesn't like that kind of stuff, but it is in that workshop that was called Building, Protecting, and Controlling Your Milk Supply. But I made sure to put a little flange sizing section in there because this is such a common question that I get. So there will be a link in the description for you. And after watching it, you'll have a lot more clarity, one, on hopefully some flange sizing, but two, how to build, protect, control your milk supply with a breast pump. Figure out a setup that's actually working for you. Okay, I'll see you over there. Happy pumping.